All right, let's try this again. So I have a inch and a half of white glass puntied up. The punty is the colorless rod that's used to hold it. Right now I'm just going back and forth in the flame to warm it up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to streak the white glass with some red. There's more than one way to do it. Some people come in from over the top. For this one I'm going to streak it holding the red glass at the bottom. The uniformity of the streak isn't really that critical. Obviously you want to try and get it uniform, but when you pull and twist it, that helps correct any mistakes that you made. Now I want the white glass to be nice and hot, but I don't want it so hot that it's molten. If you look, you can see the tip of the red glass starting to really glow and starting to soften. In fact, it's drooping now. So now what I'm going to do, okay, so I touch the two together, and now just, it helps to wiggle it. I'm heating, or putting the majority of the heat on the red glass, which I'm streaking, and I'm just working it down. So you can see I've made a nice little streak. There's a little extra glass there, so I push that onto the graphite marver to flatten it out. At this point, it's always a good idea to heat up the glass, starting from one end and working your way to the other to get it to the point where it glows. And the reason I'm doing that is when I layer one piece of glass onto another, it builds up a lot of stress, and potentially it could crack or break. This should be fine. Now the next step is, well, if I'm making a candy cane or an icicle, I need to twist this glass. So the only way I can do that is if I have another handle, another punty. So now I'm going to take this other glass rod, get that molten. What I'm making right now is called a hot seal. I'm going to seal these two together very well. So touch them together. I'll bring it out of the flame so you can see it a little bit better. It's not a very good hot seal. Let me even that out a little bit. And the reason I'm going with a hot seal is I know I'm going to have to pull it off a little bit later on. If I make up what's known as a cold seal and I'm not careful, I can end up breaking it before I'm ready, which wouldn't be the end of the world, but it's just annoying. So now what I'm going to do is, if you imagine dividing this piece of glass with the red streak on it into thirds, I want to get the whole thing warmed up. Then I'm going to focus the heat on what I call the bottom third. This will be the bottom of the candy cane. Heat that, twist it, then focus heat near the center third. Heat that, twist it, and then move up to the top. My left will be where the curve of the candy cane comes in. So I'm going to take this, heat this up, rotate, 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 and you can see how it's starting to glow. And if you look carefully, you can see it's actually softening a little bit in my hand. It actually flops around a little bit. So now I come out of the flame, and I give it just a little twist. I'm holding my left hand still. Some people twist with both hands. You do have to be careful if you do that. Now, after I've done my twist, I'm actually coming out of the flame for a moment and rotating with both hands. I'm not twisting, I'm rotating with both hands. And the reason why is I want to keep this in alignment. So now I'm doing this kind of at a weird angle than I normally do to try and get it in better view for the camera. So normally you'd be holding it like this, but I'm holding it more angled towards the camera. So I get that middle third heated up, come out, twist, twist, and I'm not pulling very much. Sometimes I am giving it just a little bit of a pull to help with the uniformity, but I'm just twisting, and I'm working my way up, right? I will come back to the bottom and make that a little bit better, a little bit more uniform. I don't want to heat up too much glass at this point, because when I twist, it'll be out of control. So come up now, give it a little twist, okay? And again, it's very easy to try and bend it at this point, and you want to avoid that. If it does get out of alignment, the trick is come up and just rotate with both hands, and it'll bring itself back into alignment if it's warm enough. If it's not warm, it'll stay in that position, and then you have to reheat it and adjust it. So get that, take it, twist, twist, twist. Again, you can see, kind of spinning it around just to get a better idea of where I'm at. Okay, and again, after I make my twist, I rotate, with both hands to make sure everything is nice and lined up. So now I come back, twist. And by the way, whether you twist whether you rotate forward or backwards doesn't matter. Just make sure once you pick a choice, or once you pick a direction for your twist, that you stick with it. Because if you rotate in the opposite direction, you can untwist the glass or make weird patterns, which in this case we're not trying to do. Some people do that intentionally, which is fine. So again, heat this up. You can see how much that's glowing. Get that nice and hot. Take it, twist, twist. And I've kind of got a lump of red glass near the top. So when I twist as I move up on the top, I will pull it a little bit more to help with the uniformity, to help thin that out a little bit. So now I'm focusing. Notice I am moving back and forth in the flame. I don't want to heat up the colorless rod, my punty, very much, because I don't want that to twist, and I don't want that to basically come apart. So I'm heating now, and I'm giving it a little, or I'm twisting, and I'm giving it a little bit of a pull. So if you look carefully, you can see there is a taper as I go towards the top, but that will all get worked out when we're finishing up the candy cane. So again, heat it up, twist, twist. Okay. Heat that up. I could adjust my flame to make it a little bit tighter, but again, in this case, it's perfectly fine. So again, get that bottom part, or what would now be the top. Take that, and notice I'm hesitating for a moment because I want to let the heat soak in a little bit, and now I'm twisting. Right. And I give it a little bit of a pull. So you can see I've kind of got a barbershop pole stripe going here, which is fine. The pitch of your coil, that's entirely up to you as far as how aggressive you want to be. Now I'm going to heat the bottom and middle because I haven't heated those in a while. Just warm that up. And again, if you look carefully, you can see that the left side is thinner than the right side. So now I'm going to kind of reverse the process. I'm going to come back to the middle and move towards my right. That nice and hot. And twist and give it a little bit of a pull. Now again, I'm trying to get the glass so that it's uniform in its thickness. Okay. I'm giving a little twist and pull, little twist and pull, and then working my way back to what I'm calling the bottom of my candy cane. Okay. Twist and pull. One of the things to be very careful about, if you notice I am coming out of the flame and looking at my work, but you don't want to do that where you take it and you just kind of hold it up like this and say, oh wow, isn't that great? If you're not careful, if you notice when I did that, now I'm a little bit wobbly because the glass was still molten and it moved on me. And in some circumstances, the glass can crack if you do that because of how rapidly it cools down. So admire your work after you're finished. Okay, so again, I'm twisting, I'm pulling. And now I'm going to heat this last little bottom area up, get that good and hot. And again, twist and pull. You never want to force the glass. As I take it out of the flame, it is cooling down. So if it's not moving when I try and twist or pull, then go back in the flame. Because if I try and get too aggressive and like force it, it's going to break. Now, since I haven't worked on the top area, I'm just going to give that a splash of heat, moving it back and forth. You can see this bottom part right here is a little bit thicker. I'm not too concerned about that because in the very last step, when we separate the candy cane, we can pull that and thin it out a little bit more if we need to. So this is a good length for a candy cane. And this technique of striping the glass and twisting it is used for many different types of objects, whether it's the beginning of a pendant or an icicle, fish, other animals and critters like that. So now what I've done is I've separated the punty that was on my left. You notice there's a little blob of colorless glass right there, so I can touch it and just kind of wind it off and then burn that off. I could also pull it off with tweezers. And that's pretty good. Now what I'm going to do, this is called gathering the glass. I'm heating it and I'm allowing it to basically form a little bit of a sphere. It's compacting itself. Now I don't want it to actually go all the way to become spherical because that wouldn't look good for my icicle or my candy cane. So now I just give it a splash back in the heat. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to feed the glass into the flame, and as I do that, gravity is going to start pulling it down. I can also use my tweezers to help adjust it, and what I'm going for is that natural curve that you get in a candy cane. Some people like to just let it gravity do it completely. Others get it to the point where it's softened and then they use tweezers or a graphite or brass to finish it off, to push it a little bit. I usually do a little combination of both. So here again I'm letting gravity bring this down, and I can even flip it like this just to get the backside hot. And now what I can do is I like to kind of pull it a little bit because the glass tends to thicken up in that curve. And I got it a little off center, so I can push it down on my graphite marver. So now I'm just heating it, and notice how I'm changing the angle of how I'm holding it to help bring it down. And I can take that, and you notice how I've got several seconds where I can move it around and play with it. And, you know, if I'm, again, still not perfectly happy with the curvature of it, I can come back here, and it's going to move where I've heated it. So you have to be really careful about that. So right now, again, just kind of give it a splash of heat. I want to let it set up, let it cool down a little bit, so that way when I attach the hook, it's not going to move. And so that's basically the body. And one of the things that I have pre-made is I basically made some loops of glass and puntied them up onto 3mm glass, and that will be the hook for my candy cane. This is a little big, but that's okay. I could always taper it down or do something else. So now I'm going to heat near the top of the candy cane, and I want to get my my hook also to the point where it's molten. And this is called welding, where I'm fusing these two pieces of glass together. So I touch them together in the flame. I don't want to push or pull too violently. I can come out and see how I'm doing, go back and forth. I could at this point tighten up my flame a little bit here, I'll show you, to give me a more narrow flame so I can come in here and focus on that interface between these two. This again is just more like a test piece, so I'm not too concerned about it. As I'm rotating, notice I'm rotating with both hands. If my left hand were to stop rotating and I were to rotate my right, it would twist my hook, so I don't want to do that at this point. And if you notice, I actually came back over here because it was starting to cool down, so I wanted to heat that back up. So I'm focusing my flame there, and I'm fused on there pretty well, at least as far as I can tell. So now I need to separate it. I'm actually going to separate the right punty first, because the punty for the hook is what's known as a cold seal, and it should break off if I just tap on it on a metal surface. So now at this point I actually have a lot of latitude of what I can do. So I'm going to heat this part up, give it a little twist, and if I want I could actually taper this down considerably at this stage. Let me switch my grip there. You can see I can twist and pull, so you can actually get quite a bit of length here, but if you do that it will thin it out quite a bit. So I'm gonna stop pulling and twisting here, and there are a couple ways to terminate this, to separate it. I'm going to sharpen my flame. All I did was I turned the gas down, and that gives me a much hotter, sharper flame. And if you notice, I intentionally burned it off with the colorless glass first, and what I'm going to do is pick off some of that colorless glass. That's part of my punty. You know, you can actually leave this colorless glass. It's not the end of the world. Since again, this is decorative and it does kind of give it a neat little shine there, but I'm just going to pick it all off, or at least most of it. Okay. And in doing so, heat that up. You notice, well, now I've got this kind of pointy end for my candy cane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a gather. I'm just going to heat this up. Notice I'm not heating up a lot of the glass. I'm just keeping it hot at the very tip. And it's a little awkward because since I'm rotating on the hook, which is inherently off-center, so I'm kind of bouncing around doing the best I can to stay centered. And I could push this on the graphite and flatten the bottom, but honestly, it's really not needed. That looks pretty good. Now what I'm going to do, warm up my tweezers. I'm going to grip here and see if I can do it on frame. Oh, there it goes. Gotta be real careful. All right. There's a little piece of glass where you make a cold seal. It basically leaves a little like glass shard there. So I'm fire polishing the very top of my hook, basically getting it to the point where it's molten. I don't want to get it too out of control as far as heating it. And so that's pretty good. And I'll put this away and let it cool. There we go.